What's good, everybody? Welcome into Daily Betslip for Wednesday, July 20th. He's Peter Dewey. I'm Ben Heisler. Not a whole lot to bet on today, but the second half of Major League Baseball season is officially underway tomorrow. Peter, I see that you got the full pinstripes in attire. You're representing your crew. You're representing the All-Star Game MVP in Giancarlo Stanton. And frankly, I don't blame you because it sounds like Aaron Judge is already on his way out.
Yeah, I mean, if Aaron Judge is going to keep saying these things he's saying, the Yankees are not in the right here. I don't want to say like the Yankees are in the right by not paying Aaron Judge because it's the New York Yankees. The fact that they are complaining about having to pay their best player money is just it's everything that's wrong with baseball. But I mean, Aaron Judge also, you are in the New York media market. You are the biggest superstar on arguably the biggest sports franchise. You cannot keep making these comments that make it sound like you're going to leave and think people aren't going to overreact to them. Like he's like stirring the pot at this point, and maybe it'll work and the Yankees will actually pay up for him. But the more he does it, the more it just feels like, yeah, this guy's gone. Like he's checked out. Like he's playing great, so you can't say he's checked out. But it's
There
like
you go.
it's like this year. It's like this year, and then it's like, yeah, they could win the World Series this year. And I genuinely don't know if Aaron Judge will care about coming back. Like I think if they win the World Series, he's just be like, all right, it's more value for me. That's the way I'm looking at it. So got to rep Stanton on the sign behind me.
Fair enough. I will say this from the Aaron Judge perspective, and we have a really fun show on pace for today. We're going to take a look in about a minute or so at the worst baseball bad beat of the first half. There were a boatload to choose from. We ended up settling on one that came in at a historic level. We are also going to go through our favorite second half futures, our best bets for the second half. Peter and I each have three that we're going to go through and break down together. And of course, we hear from you. Both of us asked you guys over the course of the day, which is your biggest bold take for the second half of the season? It can be a betting play. It can be a bold prediction. It can be really whatever you wanted it to be. And we certainly got some answers back of the interesting variety. So we'll go through some of our favorites along with our bold prediction heading into the start of the second half of 2022. But I'll say this about Aaron Judge. He sounds like he's being coached by someone to say this, right? Like it was very deliberative.
Yeah.
It was very like he took a second to think about it. It didn't feel like it was off the cuff. I get the feeling like he's trying to play the hardball routine because he knows how well he's playing and he doesn't want to get manipulated into taking a hometown discount, especially from the New York Yankees. That's how I viewed it.
I think that's fair. He definitely was caught off guard by that question as well. Like I don't think he expected to have to answer that.
Here's this heartbroken kid who thinks you're gonna leave. What do you have to say to him? Like, yeah, that was a little bit rough at the All-Star game. At the same time, yeah, like you got to be prepared for anything. Like you're a professional athlete, and media can tend to ask questions like that.
Yeah, I respect Marley Rivera for even taking the chance because he could have just said like no comment or whatever. Like I respect her for asking the question a ton. At this point, like it's whatever. The Yankees are having a good year. Like I'm just trying to focus on this year and hopefully, they do win a World Series this year. But it just sucks. Like in the back, like I don't know how to kind of compare it to anyone else. Like on my teams, but I guess like back when you were like with a Cavs fan or a Heat fan, like you knew LeBron was probably leaving at the end of the year. Like that sucks. Like the whole year you're just thinking about it like that. Like that's what I'm comparing it to. And it's not the same level because LeBron is LeBron, but like I'm like sitting here, I'm like, yeah, the Yankees are great. And like Aaron Judge is like probably just going to be like, yeah, whoever gives me the best offer, I'm out of here. It's fine.
Baseball though, man, like you've seen it time and time again with a lot of great players leaving to go ahead and chase that money, then come back and chase the ring a little bit later on. If Aaron Judge has a chance to get paid, he's going to go ahead and do so. You would think the Yankees would offer the best chance to do so, but probably a conversation for another day. Let's dive into the bad beat, shall we? We had so many on our list. The one that I brought up was actually involving your New York Yankees from a handful of days ago. Involving Clay Holmes giving up 4 without recording it out to the Cincinnati Reds. The Yankees were 48-0 entering the 9th inning with that kind of a lead. Reds are 0-49. It didn't even make the list, Peter. The top bad beat of the first half, by far and away, was the New York Mets trailing by 6 back in early May against the Philadelphia Phillies. The Joe Girardi managed Philadelphia Phillies, by the way, not at that point, right? Or was it?
No, I think he was still there.
He was still there,
Was
yeah,
he?
because Girardi left beginning of June. That was when the Phillies went on a little early run in early May. They were down by 6 in the 9th inning, and the Mets ended up coming all the way back on them. They ended a string of 857 consecutive losses by major league clubs when trailing by 6 runs or more in the 9th. The New York Mets. That was when everybody was saying this is the Mets as a team of destiny. And then, a couple months later, people are starting to say the same things about the Phillies in the midst of their double-digit win streak. But imagine having a money line bet or even a run line bet on the Phillies for that game against the Mets, and then watching them blow a 7-run lead. It's unfathomable.
Yeah, that's horrible. And the Phillies bullpen has been bad for several years now, but even that was just like, that seems safe enough, like you would think. So to me, like, obviously feel bad for anybody who's on the Phillies run line. That we probably won't see that, Ben, for another who knows how long. Like,
right.
It's going to be years before we see something like that again. So I like that we went with that one as the top bad beat, because it might be 40 years before we see another game like that.
And I misspoke, by the way. I said it was a 7-run lead. It was a 6-run 9th inning lead. Okay. Certainly one of the worst, if not the most crazy losses that we have ever seen. And again, for anybody that was holding on to a Phillies money line or run line ticket, you're probably already cashing it in your head. You're already thinking about what you're going to spend it on. And then it just evaporated out of thin air. I almost wonder, too, like, what were the odds if you could have bet the live odds on the Mets at that point? Even if they were down 4, like, you probably could have gotten it at least like 60 to 100 to 1 to make that happen and cash in. That would have been absolutely sick. I would have loved to have seen anybody just go ahead and throw that ticket onto social media in the process. That is the worst bad beat of the first half. We were already going to get plenty more, I would imagine, in Major League Baseball for the second half. And if you guys enjoy all the different crazy bad beats of the week, we cover it right here at BetSided. We talk about it, of course, every day here on Daily Betslip, but every Monday we bring them all back to you in the worst bad beats of the week. You guys can check that out every Monday over at BetSided. All right, Peter, let's go ahead and focus on the future. Normally, this show is about our best bets of the day. Instead, we're going to focus our best bets on Major League Baseball's second half. We each have 3 different plays on the board. Let's go back and forth one by one, and let me know where you're heading with this one. Where would you say is at the top of your list as far as one of your favorite bets for the second half when it comes to the futures market?
Yeah, so I have 2 similar bets. So the first one is a division bet. I'm taking the Atlanta Braves plus 150 to win the NL East. If you remember, prior to the season, for our loyal community, I picked the Braves to win the World Series. So maybe I'm a little biased here because I want to see that ticket cash. But the Braves have been absolutely fantastic, basically since Ronald Acuna came back, but really turned things around after a World Series hangover of a start. They entered the break over their final 44 games. They were 33-11, which is fantastic. One of the best teams in baseball over that stretch. And they're only 2.5 games behind the New York Mets, who, as we talked about earlier, people were calling the team of destiny. They don't look that much like that anymore. The offense kind of came back to earth a little bit. Jacob deGrom just suffered another setback in his recovery from a shoulder injury, so we don't really know when he's going to come back to this team. Max Scherzer is back, which is obviously a huge lift for the Mets, but they've watched this lead go from double digits in the division to 2.5 at the break. Now we have a whole second half of the season, and these 2 teams face off 12 more times, Ben. So the Braves are actually 3-4 in the 7 games they've played so far this year. So all it takes is they go 6-4. That's half a game now. Like that, or excuse me, all it takes they go 7-5. That's half a game now if they can play that well against the Mets. So I think this division's very much up for grabs. The Mets probably deserve to be favored just by their entire season body of work, but plus 150 on the defending champs with Acuna this year, and they didn't even have him last year. Like, it's worth a shot for sure in my eyes.
Yeah, the fact that you can get Atlanta at plus odds makes sense based on where they are in the standings. My only concern is, are we jumping on Atlanta when we've seen them play their best baseball? Like a 33-11 run over the last 44 games is outstanding. I guess my concern would be, is it sustainable? And if you're comparing both teams to each other, I still kind of feel like the Mets, even with the uncertainty of deGrom, that I still kind of like that rotation. And I also feel like I've also been the guy, and Joe Summers will get on me for this, that keeps thinking at some point Spencer Strider is going to start to slow down too. But he's been incredible. Fried was worthy of his All-Star appearance. To me, I'm a little bit concerned that we will be jumping on Atlanta when they're playing their absolute best, as opposed to a time where we've seen, like, you know what I mean? Like, one team is kind of on their way down, another team's way, way up. Like, do we start to see some sort of regression in the mean for both of these teams?
Yeah, I can see that. The only thing for me is like, if it was like, oh, the Braves just won 10 straight and they cut it to 2.5, like, be able to, like, this is a 44 game sample size where they're playing really well. And a lot of those games, like the beginning of the year, they weren't playing well. They also didn't have Ronald Acuna's bat in the lineup. Like, he changes everything for them.
No
So
doubt.
not saying it's just him, but he's one of the probably 5 best players in baseball. So anytime you add a guy like that to a team, you're obviously going to play better. There's definitely, I mean, I would definitely have the concern, like, the Mets are a good baseball team. I'm not taking anything away from them being a good baseball team. I just think the fact the Braves were able to get this to 2.5 games this quickly, and they play the Mets head to head a bunch, like, the Mets could win this by winning the head-to-head games. The Braves could win this by winning the head-to-head games. Like, if somebody like sweeps one of those series, obviously that's going to change things. But I just think there's too much value on a Braves team who, like, we've seen how good they are when they put it together. They won the World Series. Like,
No
it's
doubt.
not anything they can't do. So I think it's worth a shot, especially if DeGrom was coming back. I would think a little bit differently. But like the Mets, that 5th spot now is like a little bit of a revolving door for them. And so not having DeGrom for, I'd assume, at least the next week or so, maybe 2 weeks, like, he's going to have to re-ramp back up. I think there's some value in trying to hop on the Braves while they're still at plus money.
All right, Braves plus 150 on the board to go ahead and win their division over the New York Mets. I'm going to go with one that's an interesting prop. I saw this available over at DraftKings. They had all the different teams for an over-under on highest win total, the most regular season wins by any team. And I like the under on 105.5 at plus 120. So yes, the Yankees and the Astros and the Dodgers are 60-plus win teams at the All-Star break. And yes, the Dodgers and the Giants both surpassed this a season ago. But I was looking over some of Fangraphs projections the rest of the way. The Yankees are projected to finish with 104 wins, the Dodgers at 101, and the Astros at 100. So that's 3 teams over 100. That's still a game and a half difference while you're getting plus money on the odds. And I'm also thinking about the Yankees' lead in that division. It's still the best division in baseball, Peter, but at some point, if the Yankees continue on this trajectory, which even if they go, 41-29 down the stretch of the season, that still only gets them to 105 wins. And that's still a really strong winning percentage of about 570 plus. Like, they're probably going to end up resting some of their guys, knowing that they're going to be able to go into the postseason on a bye. And the same thing goes with the Dodgers. Like, this changes the calculus, because if they have it already wrapped, you can get extra time and extra rest for some of your players. I just don't think 105.5, even though these teams have the ability to get there, and we saw it last year, that the new playoff system actually hurts this bet as opposed to helps it. And the fact that I can get it at plus 120 odds feels like a steal for me.
Yeah, I like this a lot. And I think one thing you have to kind of consider, which you kind of brought up, is last year the Giants and the Dodgers passed us. They were also fighting each other for the same division title, so they had an incentive to play all those guys down the stretch of the season. The difference is, like, the Astros have a 9-game lead. The Yankees have a double-digit lead. I believe that the Dodgers have an 8+ game lead or something in the West, like, because the Padres have kind of fallen off. I believe it's 8 games. So, like, these teams have sizable leads where you're right. There's a good chance come September, like, there's 10 games that don't really mean anything. The only thing that would scare me is potentially the Yankees and the Astros. Those games could mean something for who gets the top seed and home field advantage. But at the same time, like, like, those teams are going to be trying to set their rotation up perfectly for the playoffs. And a team like the Yankees, who has some guys with injury issues, Luis Severino is already on the injured list, but Nestor Cortez, who's never really pitched a full season, Jameson Taillon, who's never really pitched a full season, he's been hurt. And then you look at the Astros, like Justin Verlander's coming off Tommy John. So there's a reason behind. I know Christian Javier has been great for them, but I think he pitched out of the bullpen at points last year because they were trying to conserve his innings. So there's a chance that those teams kind of coast down the stretch. And you're right, like there's a lot of wins you need to get over 105 in the second half of the year. And all three of those teams play in decent divisions. Like the Mariners are making a run in the NL West. So I don't think it's like a cakewalk that they get there either.
No doubt. All right. So those are one of our favorites each across the board. I know there's another division winner that you're also targeting heading into the second half. What is it?
Yeah, so I'm taking the St. Louis Cardinals as well to win the NL Central at plus 150 again. So back-to-back teams in second place in the NL that I really like. And the Cardinals, they're only half a game out right now. I felt like these odds were wrong too. I know Milwaukee's like looked like the better team at points this year and last year, but they've also had some losing streaks. Like I believe they entered the break losing 7 of their last 10. So not exactly, world beaters over here. They don't have the greatest offense in the world. And you look at the St. Louis team, and it's kind of the complete opposite. They have a fantastic offense. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Tommy Edman, like they have some serious bats in this lineup. They do need to get a pitcher. Jack Flaherty's probably done for the year. I saw he got transferred to the 60-day IL. So they probably need a pitcher at the deadline. Yeah. So they probably need a pitcher at the deadline. But at the same time, they have the easiest strength of schedule in all of baseball the rest of the season, according to Tankathon. So you're getting a team that's half a game out playing the easiest schedule in baseball in probably the easiest division in baseball as well. And they still have a bunch of games left against the Brewers. If they can take care of those, I think they're in a really good spot. I kind of thought this division was going to be like a minus 110 on both sides, like it's a toss-up. The fact that the Brewers are that favored, I don't see it. I think the Cardinals are probably an all-around better team, so I'll take them at plus money.
Cardinals have a good bullpen. They have a terrific offense that occasionally falls asleep at the wheel. Their starting pitching does remain a bit of a concern for me. I know that from an ERA level, they're, I believe, top 15 in baseball with a 3.75 ERA. I believe, actually, now that I look about it, that's top 10. But still pretty far down the list in wins above replacement. They're not getting enough innings from their starters this year. At some point, even though Miles Michaelis has been really, really good, I think he's still pitching a little bit above his skis. I just need to see a little bit more consistency. That is an advantage that the Brewers have, especially at the top of the rotation. But every other part of St. Louis is the more dominant team. And if you look at run differential, like St. Louis has them by about 40 runs in the division. Yeah. So I like that play quite a bit, especially at plus odds. To me, I think they're the most talented team in this division, even with Woodruff and Corbin Burns at the top of the Brewers rotation, with Josh Hader at the back end of that bullpen. You can only rely on those guys so many times versus the Cardinals. It's going to be more of a battle throughout. So I like that play quite a bit. I'd like to see them improve a little bit away from Busch Stadium. They've been a bad strikeout team away from home, but one of the best strikeout teams at home this season against opposing pitchers. So Cardinals at plus 150. I'll go ahead and give you one that is also in the Central, but on the American League side. I'm not buying it for the Chicago White Sox. And if you've been watching this show before, Peter, I think we've probably had this conversation. You've known how I felt about the White Sox really all season long. This is a team that continues to get in their own way, that has played the worst defense in the major leagues this year. For as much talent as they have on this team, some really easy guys to root for, and Tim Anderson and Liam Hendricks. There's just nothing that has gelled well at all. There's been multiple reports of a bad clubhouse. There's obviously the reports about Tony La Russa not having any sort of grasp on the team. And even in a bad division, even if they get on a roll, I just don't have a lot of confidence in a very good American League that they're going to continue to separate themselves when Minnesota still has plenty of talent, a really good lineup. Cleveland's starting rotation is the best in the division. Their bullpen certainly has been the best in the division. I don't think there's going to be any point in the season when Chicago, despite their talent, is going to be able to pull away because they would have done it already. And yes, the schedule does get a little bit easier down the stretch, but not that much easier. So I'm just not buying in on Chicago anymore. They got a ton of money in the preseason market. I saw the DraftKings earlier today posted that after the Yankees as far as total handle to win the World Series and to win the American League pennant. The Chicago White Sox are the second team on that list. I think part of the reason that their odds continue to remain where they are is because of their handle, and the fact that I can get them right now at plus 115 to miss the playoffs when they're hovering around 500 in the worst division in baseball. Yeah, go ahead and sign me up. I think it's just been a disappointing season all the way around, and I don't expect Chicago to be able to flip on the switch that's going to change everything just because the talent's there. It's been too long. They've waited too long for this.
Yeah, I think the thing for them that's tough is I don't know if they get a wild card spot. Like they're going to probably have to win the division just because of how good the rest of the American League is. Like the Mariners have went on this crazy run to kind of they put themselves in a playoff spot. Like Boston's 2 games out of a playoff spot. I believe they're 4 or 5 games better than the White Sox this year. So it's just you're in a spot where you have 4 quality teams ahead of you that aren't in your division to make the playoffs. And then you also have 2 teams ahead of you in your division who can bump you out of a wild card spot. So now you're looking, like you said, you got to win the division. They just haven't put it together all season long. And so you've been all over this since Monday's show we've been talking about. It just doesn't feel like it feels we played 92 games. Like you feel like they would have figured it out at this point. It's just never,
Right.
Every time it looks like they're going to figure it out, they lose a bunch of games and they go right back to around 500. And that's just the way this season's been. So if I'm a White Sox fan, part of me is almost like, hopefully, because I don't think they'd win a World Series even if they did make the playoffs. Like, let's miss the playoffs and maybe they'll fire Tony La Russa. Like, maybe that'll be the straw that Jerry Reinsdorf finally wakes up and realizes Tony La Russa shouldn't be managing a baseball team in 2022. But that's not here nor there. So I don't mind that play at all.
Yeah, well, just like the White Sox stink, our Ian McMillan weighs in saying that the Yankees stink. Granted, he's coming from a different perspective as a Blue Jays fan. They didn't play well down the stretch before the All-Star break, but I don't know if I put them in the category of stinkage. Like they stunk for like a couple games, but I get where Ian's coming from. Like there's definitely a perception of wanting the Yankees to start to crumble just a tad. I know you don't see that coming anytime soon.
No, it's fun. I hope more people get the Yankees hate going again because I'm tired of seeing all this stuff on social media about how great the Yankees have been this year because it's just can't rest on their laurels at this point. Because the thing that would get me so mad, the thing that I'm praying doesn't happen, Ben, is the Yankees get the 1 seed, they cruise the playoffs, and they get upset in the first round. That would be worse than like any other possible outcome. Like I can't take. I can't take that because that would be like a waste of a regular season.
So you know how like the Minnesota Twins, I think have lost like 15 or 16 straight playoff games, and almost all of them have been to the Yankees in the first round. What if the opposite happened? Like what if it's the Twins that end up taking down the Yankees this year? Like
I would all rather the times than the Red Sox because that's the team I'm most scared of. I want no part of the Astros.
They can't win against the division.
Yeah, I guess they can win against us though. They split against us. They have 1 tie in all their series against the division that came against us. I don't know. The Astros are a very good baseball team. So obviously, as a Yankees fan, like they make me nervous. But I kind of want no part of Boston, man. I'm so tired of losing to them in the playoffs these last few years. It's just really at this point, like unless we're gonna beat them, I'd rather just stay away. Like just get me away.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on from the Red Sox and any sort of curse talk there. Give me your final one. This also stays in the AL East, but your final best bet for the second half is what?
Yeah, this is one I've been on for a while. Ian and I actually did a Daily Betslip probably back in late May, I believe. Shane McClanahan to win the Cy Young, Tampa Bay Rays ace. It's plus 205 now. His odds, obviously, he's got the shortest odds now in the American League, but still a decent value considering that there's other guys chasing him. And I know there's one you want to talk about who I actually like as well. But I think McClanahan's he's been the best pitcher by far in the American League. You can maybe even say in baseball, I think he has a better FIP than Sandy Alcantara right now, which is kind of crazy to think about. His ERA is 1.71. His FIP is 2.41. So he's not really getting that lucky. He's just been really awesome. Good all year. And he hasn't allowed, this is the stat that's wild to me. He's made 18 starts. He hasn't allowed more than 3 earned runs in a start all season long. So every single game he's keeping the Rays in games. He's been going deep into games, pitching 6-7 innings. But the crazy part, and if you're into the advanced metrics, I appreciate that. Some people aren't, so I'm not going to try and force it on everybody. But if you go on Baseball Savant on Statcast right now, and you look at Shane McClanahan's profile, it's unbelievable. He's 95th percentile in expected ERA, 93rd percentile in hard hit percentage and expected batting average against, 98th percentile in K percentage, 96th percentile in whiff percentage, 95th percentile in expected weighted on base average. Like everything, like it's just he's the best. Like that's what it is. Every single spot, it's like no, he's the best, one of the best pitchers in baseball in every single one of these numbers. And it's been like that all season long. So obviously, young pitcher, the second half, maybe he slows down a little bit. But at the same time, I think if the Rays, if they kind of know they're going to lock up a playoff spot and they can limit his innings down the stretch, it's not going to hurt his resume, I don't think. If he ends up making like 25, 26 starts and he has a sub-2 ERA, are we really not going to give the guy the Cy Young? So that's my play. I've been kind of on him for a while. So glad that he's still pitching well.
Yeah, I don't really have any sort of counter to going against Shane McClanahan. And, we always talk about a lot of red and a lot of blue when it comes to looking at some of those StatCast pages. And McClanahan is all red all the time.
All red, yeah.
He's been unreal. And, he gave up a couple runs in the All-Star game. And maybe that'll get some bettors to fade him for some reason. That would be a mistake. Could be a colossal mistake based on how dominant he's been. I think as long as he's at plus odds and you're not worried about the innings going away with Tampa trying to contend for, a playoff spot and a wild card spot, then absolutely he's the most deserving favorite amongst a lot of quality pitchers in the American League. I love McClanahan there. Let me give you one other bold pick, or not even a bold pick. That's coming up in about 5 minutes or so. But let me give you one other best bet for the second half. I'm going outside the box a little bit. The odds makers just do not see things the same way. I can tell you that both myself and Joe Summers have placed some futures bets on these teams, on this team several weeks ago. Like we've been fully on board, and they've struggled a little bit as of late, but I think you're getting an incredible discount right now with the Cleveland Guardians to win the AL Central. We talked about how bad that division is. Cleveland, despite being 2 games above 500, is just 2 games back of Minnesota. They're a game above Chicago. They just have had some bad stretches. I know that the run differential isn't great, but look at some of the numbers on this team. Shane Bieber has really started to turn things around after a terrible start to the year. If you're talking about some of the better fielder independent pitching levels in Major League Baseball, Bieber's up there at 2.73. You got a chance to see Emmanuel Clase. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. Their closer, who looked as filthy as anybody that pitched in that All-Star game to get the win for the American League last night. Tristan McKenzie has a 3.2 ERA. Zach Plesac has an ERA right around 4. Cal Quantrill, ERA at 3.75. That's a good starting rotation with the exception of Aaron Savali. Like, all they need is a serviceable back-end starter that they can probably get for fairly cheap at the trade deadline. I still think there's a slight chance that if they believe that they're in full-on contention mode for a World Series, that they could go out and trade for Carlos Rodon. If the Giants feel like they're not going to be able to contend, imagine adding that kind of arm into a pretty right-hand heavy rotation. So I think that's a guy, especially if they brought him on, I think they'd instantly become the favorites to win that division. And right now they're still like around 80 to 1, 100 to 1 to win the World Series. I think Cleveland is a really, really good team. Jose Ramirez still an elite force in the middle of the lineup. Andres Jimenez has had a good season. Josh Naylor has 13 home runs. Like, there's plenty of talent on this team to make a second half run with the best manager, perhaps in the game, in Terry Francona.
Yeah, I mean, you make a compelling case, especially at that number. It's interesting. And they're only 2 games out, right, in the AL Central? Like, they're right there.
It's 2 to Minnesota.
Yeah. So that division is really like a toss-up between those 3 teams. So I don't hate that. That's a little disrespectful to them too, especially because they were leading that division at one point.
Yeah, it's the Twins at plus 110, the White Sox at plus 125, and Cleveland all the way down at plus 450. Like, zero respect for what the Guardians should be able to do based on the talent that they have on that team. I think it's ridiculous, and maybe I'm falling right into a trap, but they've shown me all season long that they can contend for that division, and I'm not going to go away from them, especially with some of the high-end talent that they do have and also the possible talent that they could acquire ahead of August 2nd. So those are our best bets ahead of the start of the second half. Let's take one last look at them one more time before we move on. So Peter is going with the Braves at plus 150 to win the National League East. Another plus 150 team in second place is the St. Louis Cardinals. Peter's going with them to win the Central. And Shane McClanahan plus 205 to take home the American League Cy Young Award. For me, under 105.5 wins at plus 120 for the most regular season wins by any team in baseball. I'm taking the White Sox at plus odds to miss the postseason. They're third place in the worst division in baseball. And speaking of that division, the Cleveland Guardians, 450, plus 450 to win the American League Central. They're just 2 games out behind Minnesota with plenty of talent still to go and plenty of games still to be able to make their case. So those are our best bets, Peter. Let's go ahead and go through some bold predictions, some tasty hot takes for the second half of the season. Before we get to ours, you and I both wanted to throw it out to our great fans that have been with us throughout the entirety of this time. So let's go ahead and go through some of our favorites that were submitted to us at Peter Dewey 2, at Benny Heiss, and at BetSided on social media. So let's see the first bold prediction on the board for the second half. The commish at Delphi Commish, who, by the way, shout out to him, Peter. He had 7 home run derby picks, including everyone in the first round, including Albert Pujols over Kyle Schwarber, and got that one right. So this guy was on an absolute heater. He likes the San Francisco Giants to the NLCS, that they can get hot at the right time. I take it if that's the case, they're probably not trading Carlos Rodon along the way.
I don't know if I see it. I really don't know if I see it. I think they have a chance to make the playoffs. I think they could probably sneak into one of those last wild card spots, but it's just not the same team as last year. Like, I feel like they overachieved so much last year, and now it's like kind of come crashing back to earth. To make the NL, like maybe they get through the wild. To make the NLCS though, I wonder what the odds are on that. I don't think we have, like, you wouldn't have odds. We don't think we have odds on that, obviously, right now. But I mean, it is a bold prediction. I will say that. I don't know if I can get behind it.
I mean, I kind of want to tail this guy based off of that recent home run derby run. But it's going to be a tough challenge, especially if the rest of their rotation continues to have some inconsistencies. I know their bullpen has had some issues as well. Lineup can be a little bit hit or miss at the top, but from a talent perspective, this is also a team that won 106 games last year. So they can get hot. They just haven't been doing it consistently for much of the first half. What else is on our list for today from our great fans on Twitter? Our guy Cody checking in. He says, I will cash my Reds and Cubs under win totals for the season at 74.5 and 74 respectively. Not so bold, but if we're taking a look at where they project the rest of the way, Peter, this is according to Fangraphs. The Cincinnati Reds are projected to win 66 wins this season. The Chicago Cubs also very much right there with them at 68. So unless both of these teams go on a massive run, which would be surprising considering they're going to be one of the few sellers at the deadline, Cody, I give you permission to start spending your money now as opposed to at the end of the season.
Yeah, those seem like pretty good bets that those will come through. I think especially like if the Reds trade Luis Castillo, maybe Brandon Drury, like I'm trying to think of guys who are actually worth something on that roster. And then like if the Cubs trade Ian Happ, I mean, there's just only so much you're going to be able to do if you start stripping those rosters down. So yeah, it's been a rough. I'm sorry, Ben. I apologize for your Cubbies because it's been a rough year.
Listen, there's plenty of things that they can eventually do better if they go out and acquire Juan Soto, perhaps. Maybe that would be a nice opportunity to get your next superstar for your next World Series run. Maybe there's a few things they can do. They certainly have the money to do so. But yeah, they tore it down and they're trying to figure out what the hell to do after trying to put some Band-Aids on it for a while. So yeah, Cubs are going to move some guys. Ian Happ is one of my favorite players. That dude is just an honestly really, really good guy. Good story after really struggling initially on. Versatile, like kind of like a young Ben Zobrist, I think. Like dude that can play multiple positions, really good defense, can lead off, really good eye at the plate. Like that's that's a winning player for whatever team ends up acquiring him, should they move him at the deadline. And then Wilson Contreras, man, like one of the best catchers in baseball and not appearing to slow down at any point. I'd love for him. I'd love for both those guys to remain with the team long term, but probably not going to be the case if you can go ahead and maximize your return for those guys as well. Now we got a couple more on the board. Who do we have next for bold predictions for the rest of the season? From Tyler, Mr. Sports Take. He says the Dodgers get Whit Merrifield and Scott Barlow, who's had an awesome year for the Royals. For a handful of prospects, player to be named later, Dodgers love positional flexibility and need bullpen help. Peter, I said earlier today that if you were to go back through my Twitter timeline to find a bunch of takes that I've come with over the last several years, most of them would probably be pretty awful and pretty wrong. But I did say back in 2018 that if Whit Merrifield is not going to be on the next Royals championship team, then you should absolutely consider moving him because he made his debut with the Royals in his late 20s. Like the maximum return you could have gotten for him, especially with a team-friendly deal, would have been massive. And he's had his worst season as a big leaguer so far. I suppose the team could take a chance on him, kind of like how Adam Frazier got moved, a couple of years ago from Pittsburgh when he was like a high average guy. Merrifield can play multiple positions, but you're not getting the same type of value back. Barlow, I think, is the more interesting name here because that's a very dominant arm in the back end of the rotation. I do think Barlow probably ends up getting moved with Whit. I just don't know if anyone's going to be really that interested in him this year.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just don't feel like he's not hitting well. He's an average guy, and he's not hit for average. So it's like he's not going to hit you home runs. I don't know. If I'm the Dodgers, like they have so many young prospects that are like solid players. Like I would just maybe call somebody up. Like other guys are going to get healthy. I don't think I go in on the Whit Merrifield business. The Barlow business, though, that's going to be a guy. He might be one of the top relievers on the market. So I don't mind that. I could see the Dodgers trading for Barlow. Like that prediction, I could definitely see that happening. I just don't know if they like the other thing is for the Royals, like, do you just want Whit to be a throw-in a deal? Like, is he under contract next year? Like you always could like hope he recoups his value next year or something.
At this point, he's going to be probably like in his early to mid 30s. Whit Merrifield he's a minus 0.4 WAR player this year. Like he just has not been good. He signed through 2023 on a 5-year, $23 million deal and with a mutual option for 2024. He's 33 years old.
Yeah.
Like it's very much conceivable that he could go to a playoff team and play really, really well in a wide variety of roles. Like I wouldn't put it past him. He's put up really good numbers in the past, but I mean, there's no team that necessarily needs to beg for Whit Merrifield this year, is my point. But Barlow's been dominant.
That's the issue is I just don't know like who that's a contender is sitting there and like, what we're really missing? Whit Merrifield's bat. Like I don't think anybody's thinking that. Like unless an injury happens and they desperately need like a second baseman, I just don't see it.
All right. We got one more on the board before we dive into our bold picks for the year. Hey, it's my buddy Adam Rosenberg. He says the Toronto Blue Jays will miss the playoffs. Wrote about the Toronto Blue Jays along with every American League and National League team based off their odds to make the playoffs. The Blue Jays to make the playoffs are minus 500 at DraftKings. To miss the playoffs, they're plus 370. So, Adam, I would highly encourage you to take a look at the different betting markets because you can get yourself probably somewhere near 4-1 odds to bet on the Blue Jays to not make it into the postseason this year.
Yeah, that's a great bold prediction. I mean, it could happen, especially in the AL East, like just the way that division's gone. Like, might just get beat up by a couple of those teams, and with the Mariners playing better. But I feel like you're almost banking on an AL Central team that doesn't win the division to be good enough to make the playoffs. And as we talked about earlier on the show, I don't know if that's going to happen. But the Jays have some serious flaws. I thought they were going to be a lot better coming into this year. Their bullpen's a little questionable. Some like Jose Barrios has had some really, really bad starts this year. Like they just haven't put it all together. Still a good baseball team. Like they've shown that they can win games, but yeah, I don't know if I would bet them to not make the playoffs, but I don't think they're that much of a lock. Like I'm surprised their odds are where they are.
Yeah. I think so too. They're, especially with the Red Sox issues within the division, as a bit concerned. Like, I think they're fully involved and can make it happen, but something that just needs to turn around for them. And clearly, odds makers are buying a second half resurgence, especially with them getting rid of Charlie Montoyo in Toronto as well. All right, so those are your bold predictions. Let's get to ours. Peter, give me a play on the board that you think is maybe a little bit much, maybe a little bit too bold for comfort, but you're ready to roll the dice in the second half of the baseball season.
Yeah, so mine is not you can't bet on it, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I think in the next couple of weeks, Juan Soto is gonna be a Los Angeles Dodger. That is my bold prediction.
Well, that's gonna ruin my my Dodgers or any team under 105.5 wins. But go ahead, make your case for the Dodgers, for the rich to keep getting richer.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think Soto is going to be a Dodger, and the reasoning why is the Dodgers, like, obviously they've done this before. They traded for Trey Turner and Max Scherzer last year. They've traded for Manny Machado in the past. They have a top 10 farm system, so they still have the assets to make a move like this. And the Dodgers operate like every baseball organization you would want them to operate. They pay their players, they draft really well and build a strong farm system. And when they have a chance to go get a top line player at the deadline, they make the move almost every single time. So for me, Juan Soto, like, the thing is if he was going to be a free agent at the end of this year, I could see teams backing off. But if I'm the Dodgers, you could have him for 3 title runs. He has the rest of this year, next year, and the year after that. And then you don't even have to decide to pay him at the end. You could, but you don't have to.
Right.
So I think just for an organization like the Dodgers, who, like, we've seen them do this time and time again, they have experience negotiating with the Nationals like they did last year. Like, why not? Why not? Why not maximize this championship window while you still have this team?
The interesting point about the Dodgers is you're right. Like, they can just play out his contract for the next 3 years and make a full legitimate decision as to whether or not they want to extend him for another 12, 13 years after that. Like, they're fully in their championship window. Their farm system continues to be stacked. It makes a lot of sense for a team like LA to go ahead and just operate their business that way, because they're not hamstrung if he does leave 3 years from now compared to several other teams. I do have one, I have a different bold prediction, but I do think there's another team that we should be considering. And it's a little bit of a dark horse. The team that I think Juan Soto ends up with is the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners, Mariners need star power. They can pair him up with Julio Rodriguez, who had his massive introduction to the baseball world at the Home Run Derby. They're both from the Dominican Republic. They're both, I believe, they're good friends too. So now you get a chance to play with some of your friends. You have one of the better young pitching staffs in baseball. If you part with one of those guys in the trade, along with the Mariners farm system, that's among the top 7, top 8 in baseball. Maybe move on from Noelvi Marte, who's a top 11 prospect in baseball at the shortstop position. Like, they have plenty of guys that you can move in this type of deal. But, I mean, Seattle needs to be aggressive here, especially getting themselves back into relevance. They haven't made the postseason since 2001, Peter. It's been 21 years since the Lou Piniella Ichiro teams. I think they have a shot at landing Juan Soto to really make this run complete. And Jerry DiPoto's been aggressive before, especially knowing that this is their window. So I think it would be a crazy opportunity, and Seattle could make a huge splash. Remember, they missed out on Shohei. They wanted Shohei Ohtani so badly. This might be your opportunity to totally redeem yourself.
Yeah, that would be really fun, man. I would actually love that. I think the way I look at it with the Soto, like I said, you could have him for 3 years. Like, I feel like every team in baseball should be like, sign me up. Even if we don't get Juan Soto for, 15 years, because if we're not able to extend him, like, it's 2.5 years of Juan Soto. Like, he's a top 10 player in baseball easily. Like, what? He's 23 years old. Why wouldn't you consider this? And I think the part for me is, it's like, people are like, oh, you're going to have to part with all these prospects. It's like, yeah, prospects that you're hoping turn out to be as good as Juan Soto. Like, I don't get it's the whole thing with trading in Major League Baseball. When people are like, this prospect's untouchable, this guy's untouchable, unless they are killing it at AAA, I just don't see, like, you're hoping they become as good as, like, when you're trading for a superstar, as good as that guy. So if that's what you're hoping, why don't you just get that guy? You already know he's that good. Like there's no, to me, that makes the most sense. So yeah, like if I'm, especially like the Mariners, a young team, like you have Julio under team control for a while. So you could pay him a bigger deal, but like you're going to be buying out some of those arbitration years. So you're not going to have to pay him a crazy average annual value at the start. So, I mean, why not? I hope he gets dealt to a good team because it's unfortunate watching him play for a horrible, horrible Nationals team.
No doubt. Let me give you a bold prick that might be on the verge of just sick. Like there might be something wrong with me in thinking that there is a remote chance of this happening, but the more I keep looking at it, the more intrigued I am. So Sandy Alcantara is the favorite to win the National League Cy Young, right? Like he's minus 120, minus 130, depending on where you look. A couple guys behind him is Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola's had an amazing year with the Philadelphia Phillies, yet his odds are upwards of 40-1. FanDuel, I checked today, he's 42-1 to win the National League Cy Young. I think he's going to pass Alcantara at one point. He's had that good of a season to the point where I'm saying to myself, between Nola continuing to look dominant, to go deep into ball games, he has a lower expected ERA than Alcantara. He's by 0.5 WAR less than him. Like he actually stacks up really, really well. And maybe only other guy in his way in the National League is Carlos Rodon, and he might get traded to an American League team. And then that conversation of the National League Cy Young possibly goes out the window. Nola this year has a higher strikeout rate than Alcantara, a lower walk rate. His ERA is higher, but his expected ERA, as I mentioned, is lower. Everything about him right now is completely dominant, and the Phillies have the fourth easiest strength of schedule the rest of the season. And the biggest differentiator is the Phillies might be a playoff team and the Marlins may not. If Alcantara like misses a month or gets sidelined and Nola continues the role that he's on, he's had his best months of his career in July and August. I was looking this up at Baseball Reference. Like from a career ERA standpoint, Nola's best months come in July and August. Is it tough? Is it a bold take? Yeah, but he's not getting anywhere near the amount of respect he deserves. And I think there's insane value on Nola to win the NL Cy Young at 42-1 with those type of numbers this year. Something's off. I think he's going to have a smash second half. And I do think at one point, maybe not all the way through, he will pass Sandy Alcantara when it comes to Cy Young odds on the board. My nuts?
I think it's worth a shot at those odds. I know I say that a lot, but I do think it's worth it. But dude, man. The thing is, like, you have to bank on Alcantara, like, being bad at some point in the second half for, like, multiple starts in a row where this starts.
Yeah, and he hasn't done it all first half.
So
I get it.
If he, even, like, the playoff thing, I wish it mattered more in baseball. It just doesn't. Like, it's unfortunate, but they just don't really care about winning with some of these awards. Which, like, I get part of it. Like, it's not Sandy Alcantara's fault the Marlins aren't a playoff team. But
it matters less with Cy Young, right? Like we've had conversations where
I don't think it matters with MVP
Judge,
that
I'm
much
taking
either.
Ohtani for MVP, and I've made the argument that winning doesn't really matter. I'm saying, like, if all things are even, it probably the tie goes to the playoff team.
Yeah, I could see that. I just don't. Noel's gonna have a hell of a second half, and Alcantara's gonna have to take a little bit of a step back. But I mean, you make a good point. Like his FIP is really good. I was just looking at Noel's numbers. Like his FIP is much lower than his ERA. It's 2.81 and his ERA is 3.13. So there is like room for him to get a lot better. Just if Alcantara has a sub 2 ERA, there's no way they can't give it to him. Like I'd be shocked if they were like, oh no, we're not gonna give it to him. So you're gonna need Sandy to get bounced around. Maybe the Phillies can rough him up a little bit for you. There's the perfect. There you go.
Yeah, we're gonna defend our guy. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna help him cash in at 42-1 to win the Cy Young and just take it to Sandy Alcantara. And again, Alcantara has been an awesome story. He's been great, but Nola's just getting blatantly disrespected here, and I'm ready to go ahead and bounce on that. I'm ready to pounce on Nola to make a charge here.
Yeah, I don't think the odds are right, so I agree with you on that. That's a little too low. I'm shocked over like 42. Damn, that's kind of crazy. Who is second? Is it Burns is second and then Musgrove third, I believe?
Last time I checked, yes. I believe that is currently the case. I'm loading up the odds right now. National League Cy Young, it's Alcantara, followed by Corbin Burns, Joe Musgrove, and Tony Gonsolin. Then you have Max Fried, Zach Wheeler. His teammate is 18-1 ahead of Aaron Nola. Carlos Rodon, Max Scherzer, and then Nola. So Nola is 9th on the list. Like,
Yeah, it's a little disrespectful.
what are we doing?
Yeah,
what are we doing? He deserves to be behind Alcantara. That's what I think.
Fair. That's fair. I don't disagree with that.
All right. Well, I've done plenty of yelling and ranting on this course of this show, so I think it's about time that we say goodbye. On tomorrow's program, it'll be you'll be back on with our guy Ian McMillan. Great to have Ian back with us for tomorrow's show as well. So make sure you guys come back for that. Also, if you haven't had a chance to get your wagers in for the 3M Open this week, make sure you check out Green on the Greens. Our guy Brian Jeffer and Cody Williams reported that earlier this week. It's available on our YouTube channel, so please go check that out. And if you haven't subscribed or given this video a like yet, please go ahead and do so that you never miss a show once we go live. We will be back again tomorrow. It'll be Peter and Ian to start off the second half of Major League Baseball season. Also, a big thanks to Joanne, our producer and director. So for Peter, I'm Ben. May all of your best bets hit for the second half of baseball and beyond. We'll do it again tomorrow right here on Daily Betslip. So long, everybody.